Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Stan.
Hello and greetings.
Today we're discussing the graphic novel of The Shadow Kingdom, 2009 graphic novel. I'm not gonna lie, it's really good. It's a really good adaptation.
I agree. I enjoyed it. Started to take a look at it, and I was thinking, I'll take one or two of the chapters in the book and take some time away. No.
You spent the whole time just reading it. Yeah, that happened to me. And I forgot to take notes for the video. Then I went, oh shoot, I gotta go back, start over, and take notes this time. This graphic novel is very enthralling. Visually, okay, it's not vagabondo, so it's good. Marvel, for example, this Cull story has some of the best comic book Western art I've seen in a while. It's really good. There's a lot of attention to detail, which Dan and I do love to draw, so we did notice that. A few things out of the way. They created, because it's a team that built this graphic novel, they created a love interest for Cull. We'll get to that later in the review, or in a separate, I'm just saying. It is a very peculiar decision to my mind, to be honest. They race changed Brull in the actual Cull stories. Brull is described as dusky skin, with Howard refusing to ever specify what that means. So it could be anyone who is native, could be someone who's just tan, could be someone who's of African descent. Brull is very well drawn. I just have one issue. I don't like that he's actually quite a bit shorter than Cull. I kind of imagine them as about equal height. And so that's something I don't like. I know some people will go, no, they race washed me. No, they made him shorter.
I know that whenever I read Cull, when I imagine Cull and Brull interacting, I always imagine Brull to be of African descent.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know what I imagined. Sometimes I imagined him being tan like what the Italians or Greeks were like, got from the frescoes of the city of Pompeii. Other times I did imagine him kind of being Semitic or something, or black. Like, I don't know, I never really fixed on a single particular image, more because I just never thought about it. I can see why you would think about it. You know what, Brull is really well drawn here, his clothes is really good, and they don't make race a major point of the character, sort of. Brull, his race and his tribe are important to him, because Pict versus Atlantean thing. The thing is, they show that Brull and Cull are more alike in some ways than anything else, which is accurate to the Shadow Kingdom. In temperament, they do have some similarities. Kanu is depicted the exact way as he is in the short story, but this graphic novel doesn't start like the short story does. It starts with a rebel, the Comte Arius, who is in rebellion against Cull because he doesn't believe that Cull is the legitimate king. He has fled to the Iron Fortress, which he is barren of. There is some politicizing behind his back. His wife is very terrified, and he is confident that nothing can break his Iron Fortress. Trouble for him, one of his top men is a traitor, gives the order for the gates to be opened. In response, Arius orders that a demon of some sort is to be let loose to destroy everyone, because why not? I'm going to go down, I might as well take you down with me. What he doesn't count on is that the Red Slayers basically order all the men aside and say, okay, clear the way, the king's going to deal with this mess. Cull arrives and makes very short work of the demon so quickly and efficiently that this thing was no real challenge to him almost at all. It is awesome. And I like how this thing does beg, like, please, I'm the last of my race. You have Cull, I care why. This thing which gives a prophecy saying, you know nothing of the kingdom you rule over. There's another kingdom within your empire, a shadow kingdom. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, what he's referring to. Arius, though, is briefly saved by the fact that Cull is wounded from his battle with this monster, so that he has to be taken back to his tent and to be mended. Meanwhile, in that tent, Tu is horrified by the unnecessary risks Cull took and scolds him and reprimands him, with Cull basically telling him, leave me be. While he's been wounded and his wounds tended to, the guy he essentially hired to take the fortress ended up deciding to slay the Count and the Comtesse, so that Cull is enraged, pretty much telling him, I needed to show mercy to this man. Now you've basically stained my hands red, and then proceeds to kill him. Fool. This is pure pastiche here, but it's really good because they're actually taking from the life of Julius Caesar. Caesar, you will bear in mind, chased after Appius Magnus across the Mediterranean over into Egypt, where Ptolemy had him
Paius Magnus executed.
Caesar was enraged by this, which is dramatized in the Rome series with him yelling, "He was a consul of Rome," for him to die in this sordid way, caught like some thief in the night, which is pretty accurate to the history, because historically Caesar loved Pompeius Magnus. He needed to show him clemency so that he could make Pompey his own political creature, but also because they had a personal friendship. Cull wanted to show mercy to Arius just for political reasons, to further cement his hold over the throne of Volusia. There was not much thought given by some of his flunkies to this, on the surface that is. In reality, they had their own incentives to do what they did. I love how what they do here is they show the common people who are glorying like, what a king, look at those shoulders and those arms. Wow, he's buff. You have the men just going, that's our king. The men are taking pride in, we have a real man on the throne. You know, someone of common birth, one of us. Yeah, he comes from abroad, but he's one of us. You have the woman just fawning and oohing over him because he's buff and cool. While the nobles, this is a really interesting touch this graphic novel does. The nobles are whining, glaring, and they're glaring while they're smiling, so that they have expressions of pure hatred sitting upon the topaz throne. This is the worst day of Volusian history. What did you think of the prelude story?
I really enjoyed it because it sets the scene. We see that Cull has an understanding of politics, because capturing this count would add to his legitimacy, and saying, okay, I've captured you, you're sworn to me, you still know how to run this keep and this land.
Yeah, politically it's very important that he show mercy. Red slayers who ask him, okay, there's a lot of the guys, knight and servants who fled into the wilderness. What do we do with them? Show them mercy, obviously.
Cull tells them,
I do not want them, hunted. I want them to be shown mercy so that I can be renowned for his clemency, and this will get the civilized men of Volusia to follow him. Little does Cull know there are people within his empire who desire to undermine his rule, and it's not just the nobility, it's the Shadow Kingdom. Cull, though, has another reason why his claim over his throne is so weak, and it's one that he does not entirely seem to grasp in this graphic novel. I'm not sure how accurate that would be to the short stories. Howard had not really delved into it, but a king without a son is a king without a future, to an extent, as it has been once said. Cull's in that situation. Until he has an heir, his claim is shaky. Right now, he has acknowledged the Baron Canub as his possible successor, and the Baron Canub is not exactly brave and would be a figurehead. Yes, Cull has taken the step of essentially coming short of adopting Canub, but on the other hand, really going to need an heir soon. And this graphic novel kind of gets into that a little. That said, he proceeds to end up hosting a embassy from Comoria, with that king bringing along his youngest daughter, who's 18 years old, and proposing that Cull should marry her. Cull seems to consider making her his queen. Then Count Volmana shows up, interrupting the polite embassy being exchanged, and Volmana ends up pleading for mercy and claiming, well, I didn't know I was supposed to show mercy. You have Cull going, I said not to let him in. You have the Red Slayers, oops, sorry about that. And it's very strongly implied. Lizards. They just let Volmana through. Cull, though, is angry. Doesn't exactly show his most flattering side when he loses his temper. The King of Comoria is fickle, doesn't exactly show much happiness about this, and his daughter is no less selfish, as is shown in the story, and no less spoiled than her father. But in turn, the Picts show up for their embassy. Cull proceeds to insult Bruhl, who challenges him to a duel because he's Bruhl the Spear Slayer. He's awesome. Cull mocks him, but agrees to go to that one feast with Kanu. Has the feast and whatnot, and we all know the story at this point because we've gone over it in enough videos. What follows is essentially the Shadow Kingdom story of Cull and Bruhl hunting down the Serpent Men within the palace. But before the hunt, Cull meets with his only wife at this moment, because he has probably many concubines and mistresses, but not a wife. And he admits that he doesn't really care one way or the other about the harem, but it is important that he have a harem, as it is a Volusian custom. In turn, in this story, the Lady Igraine, or I should say Queen Igraine, is his wife and was a daughter of the king whom he usurped. She apparently hated her dad, even more than Cull hated him, which says something. Her dream is to give birth to future kings. She wishes to be Queen Dowager, because apparently she could not succeed to the throne herself due to Volusian custom. So she saw the best way to the throne essentially by tempting and pushing Cull to the throne, telling him, in my veins runs the blood blood of the imperial family. You need me to strengthen your claim to the throne, which Kull had agreed because it makes perfect sense for him to marry her. And the fact that she's beautiful and voluptuous probably added to the temptation. The trouble is she is fickle and angry. She's, how do I put it? She has a spiteful, vindictive side. Yeah, you could tell she's a princess. And she does have some of her father's temper. She seems to have been an abused child. In one of the follow-up graphic novels, it shows how her father was with her at times. Not exactly nice. Mostly he was verbally and physically kind of abusive. But
you also have the fact that Kull is a little bit more aware that he's in a literal den of snakes. He can't trust anyone of noble heritage.
Not even her. And she, however, is very jealous and frightened of him marrying this foreign princess from Comoria, because that foreign princess is a little younger than her. Youth is a major weapon when it comes to female politics. Historically, just look at Henry VIII of England. But she is very apprehensive, very terrified, and reacts with anger, and makes one threat that I don't think she could get away with. I don't think Kull would back off quite immediately over. When she goes, okay, fine, then I'll just take a lover too. And she immediately gasps and looks terrified because she realizes what she just did. I don't think she would make that mistake if she were truly raised as a princess. I think she'd be able to mind her tongue there. On the other hand, Kull would not simply back off, but might threaten her or something. But he's like, fine, just I expect you to be discreet. I don't think that moment really fits. It doesn't really work that well. That said, they take down the snakes. Everybody is surprised when Kull defeats Snake Man disguised as Kull. Weirdly, they have it be the princess from that other nation, Sheldmira, I think it is, who ends up asking, has he passed? And Brill says, no, it'll take more than that to defeat him. The difference is that at the end of this story, the King of Comoria threatens Kull and starts behaving like a windbag. And his daughter is basically like, oh, well, okay. Thanks for the entertainment, Kull. Peace. But her dad also threatens Kull, who basically says, I've beaten you before. I'm not terribly afraid of you. Of course, this is probably why in the immediate follow-up story to the Shadow Kingdom that is pure graphic novel, Igraine is very pleased with Kull because he apparently rejected the other princess. It seems like the Comorian monarch was just disinterested in this entire match. But we'll analyze Igraine in a later video because she is an interesting character. Oh, and this graphic novel also shows that Eolal was Eolal the 11th, which is a pretty interesting touch. Kull, in the follow-up story, ends up running into problems as while him and Brill were busy cutting down the vast majority of the Serpent Men, Kanu had slipped into the palace of the Serpent Men to try to steal the Serpent's Eye, which the Serpent Men are pretty possessive of because it has serpent in its name. The only trouble is they send a delegation led by their high priest, the head of the snake cult, who proceeds to act like a spoiled child and threaten Kull and generally misbehave while vowing to have Kanu put on trial and executed. Kull decides to buy time with a feast to distract the Serpent Men, who easily fall for to take the bait, because while Kull 2 and Igraine are busy with this, you have Brill who's gone off, sword in hand, to go grab the gem for reals. Well, Kanu failed. So obviously we'll solve the problem of him being accused of having tried to steal this thing is if I actually steal this thing. Where's the logic? But Brill sees as, I don't care. They're not going to be allowed to have it. It seems like he's almost more interested in payback. And that is kind of Brill's personality. But he easily grabs it and fights off a bunch of snake men, even when they occasionally get the drop on him, because he's awesome. He escapes. Kull then eventually comes to his rescue, right as Brill kind of is a little worn out. Kull then races back into the Megaron, where he finds the snake men having pulled out their arms and ready to have a massacre, and basically says, told you to keep things civil, and look what you've done, woman. And you have Igraine looking like,
like, no, she tried. She stalled.
Yeah. But it's such a funny scene because she's so annoyed. No, like, you have this little storm thing bubble over her head. Like, she's really, really annoyed. Yeah, it's a really funny scene. In turn, Kull ends up basically keeping the snake side. The story ends with the snake priest saying, you'll get yours. I wish it had ended with his passing. But the snake cult is essentially almost, it's not quite politically broken. It'll take a bit more work. But it seems like this is a pretty good near conclusion to the story, or follow-up to Shadow Kingdom. So that it kind of puts Shadow Kingdom into the middle of the story. Beginning, middle, and end there to an extent. It's actually quite good. Anything you want to add?
I really enjoyed the art. I know I commented about Kull and Brill swore they clasped hands. Very beautiful imagery.
The funny thing is, the most well-drawn characters are probably Cull, and I will admit Ukraine. She's very well drawn. I really liked whose design. Brol should have been taller. I'm just saying, I don't like him being shorter than Cull. I know I'm nitpicky, but the art is pretty good. I highly recommend it for that reason. But also, this video is going to be showcasing a lot of the art, so yeah, you'll see how great it is. The characterization is generally spot on, except for the one scene with Cull and Ukraine. It's so weird. Now let's rate this story, or this adaptation, I should say.
3.5.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to follow your lead and say, yeah, 3.5. It's quite good. Highly recommend this. So, I guess that's it. Smash that like and that subscribe button, as though you recall running through the snake doppelganger that tried to take his throne.